Reverend Katey Zeh, thank you so much for being part of this conversation today on building your compassion muscle. So today I want to ask you, you're a fitness trainer. Is there anything from the work that you do that might be applied to strengthening compassion?
This is a fun question. So I think that there are. If you are somebody who's new to fitness, one of the biggest things is learning, proper form, but also taking it slow and not going from doing nothing to running a marathon or lifting, bench pressing 100 pounds, right? You start slow and you're consistent. So I feel like that's the first thing, is maybe starting with something that's small, that's sustainable. And then from there, training, we like to train our muscles in different ways. So we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting our muscles to be able to do more. So as we exercise our compassion muscles, we have to keep challenging them in different sorts of ways, and build on what we've already done. So those are two things that I can think just off the bat. And there's also rest, right? You can't work muscles the exact same way every single day. Our muscles actually to get stronger break down, and it's in the healing that we actually get stronger. And so I think that self-compassion has to be there too, of giving ourselves the space to kind of heal from what we need, maybe what we didn't get from other people. That compassion that we would have wanted, we can give to ourselves, and that strengthens our muscles too.
Awesome. So as I was listening, what came to mind is the experience that many people have of going to the gym and overusing underdeveloped muscles.
Yes.
And then saying, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right.
Are there any ways you see in society that people do that as it relates to the compassion muscle? That it's something that's underdeveloped, and then they take on something really big and then say, see.
Yes. I think white people and dealing with racism is a big one that we've seen over this summer, right? Where there's this amazing racial uprising happening. And I'll just give you this example. I was looking at the library ebook collection, and back in June or July, there was not an anti-racism book that you could get. They were all checked out and they were backed up for 6 months. And now, if you go, they're all available. And a friend actually said, well, maybe it's that they got more copies, and I hope that that's true. But I do think that there is a certain amount of burnout that comes with feeling like I have to do everything right this second. I have to do it perfectly, rather than thinking about what are small sustainable changes that I can make in an ongoing way. And so I do see that among white folks, and myself included. And so one of the things I've shared with you is I've made some big commitments that are they're regular, and I've agreed to do them for a year to kind of keep that program going, right? The exercise program of dealing with my own white supremacy. I'm on a 1-year program. I didn't sign up for the boot camp. I signed up for the long burn. And so I think that's so important that we provide accountability for ourselves that's not just internal, but that's in community. And I think that's another mistake that some people make with fitness, is that they don't have anybody who's doing it with them. They don't have accountability. They don't have companionship. They don't have somebody there saying, hey, I didn't see you today, or how'd your workout go? So I think it's really important in all journeys that we're on, whatever challenges we're taking on, that we have people who are there to encourage us and hold us accountable.
Accountability. Thank you so very, very much for bringing that in. And community, absolutely important. But also, what about having someone who's a trainer or a spotter in this? Are there ways, whether it relates to how people deal with the realities of white privilege and anti-Black racism, and I cite anti-Black racism because there's a lot of racism, but that's particular expressions of that as it relates to Black bodies. How do people use a spotter or a trainer to help them develop their compassion muscle?
Yeah. So thinking about my own training, there's a lot of focus on modeling good form, but also being able to describe to somebody in multiple kinds of ways how to correct when they're not quite getting it right. You don't just say one thing, you learn like 3 or 4 different cues to help someone understand how to change what they're doing to get that form just right. And I think that that's what, you know, in a movement, somebody who's more experienced, who's worked with lots of people who've had similar struggles, who can kind of be that guiding presence of, all right, good effort, but I think we need to tweak it just a little bit, and let me show you, and let me be there to kind of help you adjust until you get it quite just right, and you can feel what it feels like to have it be, and then you can do it on your own. But I think we all need those folks, and even experienced athletes, right? They continue to have trainers who continue to tweak their form and get them to that, you know, next fitness level, or meet a certain goal. So I think we all need those folks, because if we do it on our own, we might not get it right. If we don't have the information in the training, we might be doing it completely wrong and end up hurting ourselves, or in the case of a movement, hurting somebody else.
So I was in a meeting recently where we were talking about the Breonna Taylor case. The decision had just been made that day, and everyone was in pain, racially diverse group of folks. And when I say racially, let me tweak that, make that more accurate. There were Black, white, and Asian, but primarily Black and white. And one of the things that I observed in that meeting was the white folks being very quiet. And so I invited folks to I invited white folks in particular to make sure they spoke, because when white people don't speak, when there's a conversation about race, that it leaves many people of color feeling they're being observed and feeling that the white people have checked out, and, you know, and those kinds of things. And so after I said that, one white person said, I was wanting to create space for the people of color, and in particular the Black folks, to have voice in this space. So that's one of those compassion issues. So how do you do it in a way that really feels compassionate to other people? And so I'm putting you on the spot perhaps as a white woman, but if that's something you could speak to, I think it can really be illustrative about how we engage with compassion in lots of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the work of being a white woman in this space, and as horrible racial injustices come up in real time every day, is learning the nuances. Like, there's not just a one size fit all in terms of how to respond in those moments. And there might be times when that is the appropriate response. And I think that there's got to be some realization that the needs of different people at different times are going to be different. There is no one way to be in those spaces. And I think for me, what I'm learning is that it's better just to articulate and speak imperfectly about how I'm feeling in the moment, and to say, I hear that you want me to speak. What I was feeling was maybe I shouldn't be centering myself. Tell me if I'm off or not. You know, like that vulnerability of just saying, here's what I'm feeling like I should be, is, if that's not it, let me be something that you need right now. Or, you know what I mean? Like, just learning that it's not always going to be the same. And I think the perfectionism so often becomes a silencing thing for white folks, of just not wanting to say anything for fear that it will make things worse. But like I said, what I've learned is that it's usually better to offer something imperfectly, to be open to being corrected, or to be told, actually, that wasn't helpful, and have it be a learning experience. Because if we don't say anything, there's no learning, and we don't grow and trust with each other.
Thank you so much. And here's the last thing. well, I have one last question, but I want to say this. Brene Brown talks about how important vulnerability is for compassion. Mm-hmm. And also that compassion requires decentering ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so as you were talking about building different muscles, and muscle groups, part of what's central to compassion is strengthening the muscle of decentering oneself. Mm-hmm. And there's a variety of ways in which we can do that, which is also something that shows up in how we vote. It shows up in what we think the school board, the curriculum ought to be. It's about decentering self. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And I want to talk more about that later, but I want to get to this last question. And that is, we hear a lot of people talk about radicalizing people as terrorists. How can we radicalize people as conveyors of compassion? People in our family, our work colleagues, our faith communities, our neighbors, strangers, etc., to really excite people and bring them, inspire in them a level of commitment to compassion that they're willing to change their lives for. And that's what I mean by radicalize.
Yeah. Well, not knowing a whole lot about how radicalization happens, my guess is that it is kind of a gradual process, but that there is an inspiring or captivating vision that's connected to some gradual action over time. So I know that you've done some reading about how compassion is also good for ourselves and improves our lives. So it's about, yes, creating the society that we want to be, and that we also benefit from that we will experience deeper joy and deeper connection. We'll make connection with folks for whom we would never have interacted if we have radical compassion for each other. So I think it's really focusing on the both and as you were talking about decentering self, I was thinking again that feels like something that's sometimes oversimplified, that, for example, just speaking first means I'm centering myself. That's not true. It's the content of what I'm saying. It's the feeling that it's the honesty that I'm bringing to it that can dictate whether or not I'm centering myself in the words that I say. So I hope in radicalizing people that there's just kind of a nuanced and rich understanding of compassion that benefits all of us in our everyday lives and our world as a whole. So I love that concept. Let's take it back for good.
Well, thank you so very, very much. And
Reverend Dr.
we want to help people build their compassion muscle that they get to exercise for themselves. I heard you talk about within their families, their community of folks, but also for the broader society.
Let's do it.